I don't know what's more confusing, learning astrology or just being a human. Moonday Musings is here to help with that. A weekly, no bullshit guide for the upcoming cosmic forecast and how you can actually use this in your real life. Hi, neighbor. Happy Monday. Happy Moon Day. And happy very first day of September, my friend. Welcome to another episode of Moonday Musings here at That Witch Podcast. I don't know about you, but feels like we've stepped through a little bit of a portal, or maybe we're about to. How are you feeling today? If you are a parent and you just over the course of the last few weeks or few days experienced back to school, or if you are an educator or just part of the school system, you are part of back to school, it feels like stepping through a portal from summer vacation into the school year, truth be told. But here we are, September 1st, and we have quite a month of astrology to go through, my friends. If you've never been here before, hi and welcome. I'm so glad that you found your way to our witchy little neighborhood here. I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. And I'll be your host, your guide, your mentor, your spiritual bestie in all things magic, witchcraft, and cosmic living. And in Moonday Musings, as we deconstruct and go through the main astrology of the time, we really take from this how we can apply this information into our day-to-day lives and into our day-to-day spiritual practice and magical practice. And on the first Monday or the first moon day of the month, we go over the cosmic energy of the entire month ahead. Now, this is an episode that I highly recommend taking notes for. Some listeners, some of my students in That Witch School, my monthly membership, we will take notes directly in our planner or directly in our digital or physical calendar. Can be a really helpful place. One of my amazing students, also named Danny, she suggested a few months ago a journal guide of some sort to kind of complement or go along with our Moon Day episode where we go over the cosmic energy of the whole month. Or no, maybe she brought it to me first for the gratitude episode, which is the last moon day of the month. We kind of take a look back throughout the month that we just had, and we pull through our reflections some gratitude. And it might have been that she suggested a journal template for. Regardless, I created a journal guide for both first Monday or moon day of the month and last moon day of the month here on Moonday Musings to help you get the most out of this episode, but really ultimately just to help you get the most out of the current astrology and how it applies to you and how you can utilize it. I think there's such power in regularly doing both, looking ahead with astrology, but taking the time to also then later on reflect back in hindsight. So we provide all the tools and the guidance around here for you to do that. It's such an easy astrology podcast to follow. So make sure you share us and our YouTube channel with your friends. It's super helpful. Moonday Musings is like the best part of my week. It's the best part of all of our neighbors' week here in the neighborhood. And then when you stick around, we have another much more witchy and magical episode coming to you on Wednesdays again, now that the school year is in session. During summer, I took a little break from producing our second episodes of the week. Those are now coming back, and coming back they are. I am so excited this month to be going through the fundamentals of elemental magic with all of you. And this week we are going to be starting with none other than the element of fire. So make sure that you come back this week for that. Now, let's jump in to the astrology of September 2025, my friends. So we are going to go through the main basic overview, the essentials, if you will, of the astrology of September. We're going to go through the major lunations like the full moon and the new moon, planetary ingresses, which is just an astrologer's way of saying when one planet moves from a sign into another sign. And then finally, planetary stations, which is when planets station retrograde and or station direct. So let's grab our journal or planner, our calendar, maybe the journal guide that I have for you to download on my website. You can get that link in the show notes below right now. But Backstreet's back, my friend, metaphorically and literally. I'm watching a lot of people going to Backstreet Boys concerts lately. I'm very jealous. I'm very happy for you. If you are one of those people that have got to go to a Backstreet Boys concert recently, I'm so jealous and living vicariously through you also. Let's start with literally today, Monday, September 1st, because today, Saturn, who is currently retrograde, is officially dipping back into Pisces. She is back, my friends. Saturn moved into Aries and activated those with Saturn and Aries first little pre-beginnings of their Saturn return vibes, themes they can look forward to. And this was not the end, however, for folks who have Saturn in Pisces. Saturn, who's been retrograde, has moved back into Pisces and, yes, reactivates your Saturn return. And anybody who had Saturn in Aquarius and Capricorn and so on and so forth, you get it. You get it. Even if you don't know if you got it, because maybe you didn't study astrology or you don't know as much about astrology to know about your Saturn return and you already had it, I trust. Oh, wait, no, trust me. Believe me when I say that when Saturn retrogrades back in to the sign it was in when you were born, it's kind of this time in your life. This takes place in your very late 20s into your early 30s, everybody. So if you're wondering what time in your life, you can think to this like threshold that you cross from like 28-ish to 31-ish, 32-ish. Now, the reason we give the wiggle room like that is because the effects and the activation is felt in this kind of leading up to and dissipating way. It's not really a hard start and stop. So you can think of those very late last years of your 20s and those very, very first early years of your 30s. That's the time frame that we're talking about with your Saturn return. If you think back to this time, there is typically life-altering either events and or revelations. Usually it's both. And usually it's a series of both over the course of this. Life-altering is the main thing here, because what Saturn does is Saturn is this planet that is responsible for being kind of our parent, our chaperone, our guide, our teacher. I have this wisdom, I have this knowledge and this past experience. I can tell you and give you as much information as possible, but really you have to experience life and then you have to make choices based on that experience. All of that big umbrella of a concept, Saturnian, okay? And so if you think to your late 20s and early 30s, whether you're thinking back to that time, maybe you're in that time right now, my friends, it is usually a time that is associated with like experiences that forever choose a course for you. It's a time that you look back on and there was like, you're like, there was before that version of me and there is after that version of me, because that's how big of a marker that time was. So when you are in a position like our friends currently with Saturn and Pisces, you might be in your first Saturn return, or you might be in your second Saturn return, depending on how old you are. And regardless, what the purpose of this time for you is to be taking your experience, your gained knowledge, and therefore wisdom, and applying it authentically and pragmatically. When we kind of divert from that is when our Saturnian lessons feel the hardest and the harshest. It's when we go against our own moral and ethical code. It's when we make decisions to make shortcuts, to take advantage of other people, to better ourselves, those things that come back and bite us in the ass later on in a lot of ways. And this looks very different for everybody, but it in and of itself is a very universally shared experience. That's why Saturn is associated with time and karma and things coming full circle. So my friends with Saturn and Pisces, this is a time for honoring your experience and your wisdom. Because your Saturn is in Pisces, pay attention to and honor and trust your intuition right now, my friend. So so let's see here. All right, so Saturn retrogrades into Pisces today. Then this finally moves into, after Saturn stations direct again, and finally moves back into Aries. This is going to be February 13th, 2026. Okay, so that's the time frame that we're looking at. Now, to shift quick little lightning gears, as is so telling of our next planet, tomorrow on September 2nd, Mercury enters the sign of Virgo. Mercury is at home or in its domicile sign in Virgo, so there is usually a pretty enhanced energy and efficacy of our communication and thinking patterns and learning processes. And this can be a time of being very, very well spoken. And as always, in the nature of Mercury and communication, remembering that communication is a two-piece function, with speaking and being well spoken on one end, and being an active participating listener on the other end. Okay, definitely take that in mind with Mercury in Virgo, which it will be until September 18th. Next is going to be Saturday, September 9th. Zinger Uranus, who is in Gemini, is going to station retrograde. It's going to go back into Taurus, actually, as well. Just like Saturn is moving and shifting back into Pisces, reviewing some Piscean lessons with all of us. Uranus is doing the same, stationing retrograde in Gemini. It'll move back into Taurus on November 7th and reactivating some Uranus in Taurus lessons, themes, events. It'll stay retrograde until February 3rd, 2026. So, and then it will finally move back into Gemini on April 25th, 2026. So what you can bear in mind for Uranus and Gemini is all of this time with this first degree of Uranus and Gemini, these last several weeks, last couple of months. I think it's been about 8 weeks. This has been a big preview, if you will, of Uranus and Gemini themes and lessons, and in plenty of cases, opportunities. So to be paying attention to technology right now and global communication and interaction, power dynamics and structures, and specifically the tension and struggle within those, and the lightning strikes that come to those or from those, both in a human man-made sense and also from nature as well. Uranus lightning strikes can also definitely be in the form of nature, natural disaster. Extreme weather. Weather is a big association with Uranus and Gemini. So paying attention to weather right now. This is all kind of a precursor, if you will. And then when Uranus moves back into Taurus from November 7th to April 25th, 2026, that whole about 6-month period is kind of a final review, just like we talked about with Saturn moving back into Pisces, kind of a final review of Uranus in Taurus lessons and, again, opportunities to really take what we learned from the chapter, the last 7 years of everything that took place the last 7 years when Uranus was in Taurus, everything that took place in, again, communication, power, tension, and struggles, dynamics, technology and global interaction, learning, weather and nature. Big reflection of what Uranus and Taurus looked like was looking at weather patterns over the last 7 years, okay? And looking at them right now, compare and contrast what was this kind of like the last 7 years, how has that looked different now with Uranus and Gemini? Because that's giving us a little bit of an inclination of what those types of things are going to look like for the next 7-8 years. All right. Okay. So we're just like the truth about September. The truth about September, in a lot of ways, if I'm being honest with you, is it's just pretty intense. It's kind of like this, once it starts rolling, it really, really rolls, and it keeps fucking going all the way until we hit Libra season at the end of the month. And then the major planetary interactions that we follow here on Moonday Musings just stop. Any of our major highlights that we would look at, they just stop after Libra season. Everything takes place up till then, which I think is super fascinating and very telling and reflective of Virgo energy, quite honestly. It's just going to be go, 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 go this month. Just take this into everything we're about to go through. I would ground a lot this month. While I go through these transits, it wouldn't be a bad idea, like if you're making note of them, to be like, also probably ground around this time. A little extra grounding, touch some grass, hold a crystal. Okay. Put your hands in some dirt if you can. That's a good one. That always helps. Okay. Okay. So we go from this on Saturday the 6th to our total lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now, this is our full moon in Pisces. This is September 7th, the very next day after Uranus stations retrograde in Gemini. Here's what I wrote down. This is intense, but also magical. So if you listen to my episode with Ashley on her podcast, Ascending with Ashley, we did an Astrology After Dark episode kind of going over the astrological energy of the rest of 2025. I highly recommend listening to it. I will make sure there is a link in the show notes below. There we go. So that you can go listen to that. It's going to be something really helpful, like context that's really helpful every moon day at the beginning of the month, every month. to have that context going into each month, because Ashley and I are talking about like the main highlights throughout the end of the year. And we talk about this total lunar eclipse in Pisces. We go into detail with this eclipse season pretty good. And there is definitely plenty of intensity with this. And if you're willing to like throw yourself on and ride the wave of surrender, this can be a very magical full moon eclipse for you. And I have felt that way since I very first looked at the chart for this eclipse. I very much will say, as a person who believes in that it's totally fine to do magic during eclipse, and it is, I will say this is a very intense one. And don't make your decisions so black and white based on if there's an eclipse or not an eclipse, and base it way more on your energy, your mindset, where you're at that day. Because I have a strong feeling that a lot of people, even folks who love doing magic during eclipses, might not be in their best shape for doing that type of ritual and magic during this eclipse. And it might be a time of leaning the hell into like the magic of nostalgia and childhood through some like super comfy, cozy, borderline isolated in your bed, watching your favorite old movies from when you were a kid, wearing jammies that remind you of being a kid, eating snacks that remind you of being a kid, or just things and an ambiance that make you feel really soft, cozy, private, safe. That might be the type of magic that you feel the most called to leaning into and surrendering to during this really intense eclipse. I think that the eclipse following in Virgo that we'll talk about is also going to feel rather intense as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this first, at the beginning of September, y'all, feels like a fucking steep ramp up, like a 100-degree 100-mile-per-hour acceleration, just 0 to 100 instantaneously. Especially if you are a super deep or big feeling person, my friend. And I'm probably right now, my higher self is probably, which freaks me out. If I'm being so vulnerable, that freaks me out. But it's true. My higher self is probably giving myself like a lot of advice right now, because this eclipse is going to be like super right on top of my Pisces moon in my chart. This eclipse will be at 15 degrees Pisces and my moon is at 17 degrees Pisces. So she right there in my 8th house. It's going to feel intense. And that might be the type of magic that I need to lean into, my friend. But I do want you, regardless, to honor your intuition during this time, whatever that looks like, whether it's just putting a little bit more intention into making your coffee that morning, or remembering to just light a candle while you're doing some work from home that you dedicate to the moon or the eclipse that day. Maybe it is remembering to grab a certain crystal that you just want to keep in your pocket or your bra or your purse or your shoe. Oh, man, it sounds terrible. It sounded better in my head. Don't put a crystal in your shoe, most likely. That sounds very uncomfortable. Regardless, it can be super, super simple, but you might want to make note of that wherever you're making notes today, of doing something a little bit more intentional that day that honors your intuition in some type of way, no matter how big or how small. Now, there is a gnat flying in here, so if you're watching me on YouTube, sorry. Okay. Now, that is so telling of so much of the astrology right now. There's so much like little minor irritation. We were talking about this at That Witch School's Hot Takes event, which is where myself and my astrology partner in crime in That Witch School, Jenny SRP, we do birth chart hot takes live for a major upcoming transit. We did Uranus and Gemini. We were talking about the little teeny tiny irritation things that like the snag in your sweater or the fly buzzing around you that annoys you, kind of building and growing during this time. And that's happening right now. So there's some real life astrology for you, my friend. So after this intense eclipse, then we have Thursday, September 18th, Mercury entering into Libra. So Mercury will end its time in Virgo and move into the sign of Libra. Now, Mercury is moving into an air sign when it moves into Libra, and Mercury is an air sign. All this was so funny. So there is a ton of just diplomatic, intellectual energy, knowledge, wisdom. Mercury is just like able to access in Libra. And I want to preface what I'm about to say next with that because I adore Libra energy. And when I was typing out the transit, Mercury moves into Libra, Mambo Number 5 by Lou Bega instantly came into my head. And I think that was not an accident. So there also could be some juggling of lovers and flirtations during this time. This can be literal, okay? This can be literal, straight up people flirting with people in Libra. Don't get me wrong, very associated with this time. Honestly, there can be some cheaters during this time. I'm just going to be super stereotypical about it, but it's also very, very true. There just can be. There's too many people, my friend, that are walking cliches in and of themselves. So it's bound to happen. And this flirtatious, multiple lovers, juggling it all, and it's giving you that excitement. That can also be super metaphorical, by the way. Think about the things in your life that do that. Oh my God, this gnat flying in front of the mic. It can also be creative projects. It can be friendships. It could be coworker friendships. It could just be the different relationships in your life. They all seem to be kind of competing for each other. It can be hobbies with work or professional all coming and kind of colliding. And it can be this time that teases you in some ways with really, really like, look at how much I can do. And this gives me so much life and vitality and feel so good about myself. And I'm also connecting with the others or this thing. And it's a time that humbles your ass quickly and shows you what happens when you bite off more than you can chew. And when you get a little cocky. Keep that in mind. Mercury will be in Libra until October 6th. Next, we have Friday, September 19th, the very next day. Venus moves into Virgo. Very different vibe than what we were just talking about. Venus moving into Virgo is a placement that my daughter has, and there's actually many dear people in my life that have this placement. It is a little bit of a toughie. So Venus is exalted or functions on high in the opposite sign of Virgo, which is Pisces, which means that when it's in the sign of Virgo, it's considered to be in its fall. And that means that it has a little bit harder time accessing its skill set and strengths. And it has to work a little bit harder for them, and it has to work for them in a little bit of a different way. Ultimately, in my opinion, when planets are in their detriment or their fall, it's actually a great time of growth and learning. I think that a lot of perspective is gained and expanded, and I think there's a very high purpose to these transits and to these birth chart placements. Just so you know, if you do have a placement like Venus and Virgo, my friend, it does not mean something is wrong or broken with you. It does mean that you have to work a little differently, a little more creatively, or a little more resourcefully to access some of those skill sets and strengths for yourself that Venus gives us, which is our deepest, most meaningful, how we hold and create our values, attract them and keep them. This is why our relationships and ideas of beauty and love all fall under the Venetian umbrella, but so does even our business and our money, our belongings in a lot of ways. It's just the things that we hold the most dear and the most meaningful to ourselves, and how we go about attracting and repelling the opposite of those things that we don't like and we don't want and we want to keep as far away from ourselves as possible. Disgust, in my opinion, is just as much a part of Venetian lessons and themes as beauty and love is, because our aesthetic, our style, our preferences, our values, all of these things are associated with Venus and our Venus placement. So many of them are shaped by the things we absolutely fucking hate, and we wouldn't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole. Plenty of those things we're very unapologetic about, and there's a lot of those things that we're a little bit more polite or tactful about. Some of those things we have a hard time really expressing for ourselves. Venus in Virgo, because it has a little bit harder of a time, I actually think it helps. I think it helps because I believe that Venus in Virgo really greets us with those things, the things that we really hate and don't like and are disgusted by, and we find there are non-negotiables we're intolerant of. No, this is where I draw my line, my threshold. And honestly, I think Venus in Virgo gives us the sacred divine permission of embracing those things. That's how I feel. Now, the shadow qualities of Venus and Virgo is becoming this like overly picky, perfectionistic person who doesn't allow space for any type of imperfections or flaws or mistakes, right? Things like this. So we can go crazy overboard with this. But I also think that if you are a chronic people pleaser, Venus and Virgo transit, which is now until October 13th, can be a really healthy and helpful time for you, my friend, to unapologetically embrace and express what you don't like. Get it away from you. That's all right. Okay, now this moves us into our eclipse. Sunday, September 21st, on the last day of Virgo season, we have our second in a row new moon in Virgo. We talked about this last month a couple of times. Here it is. It might feel cool, by the way, to go back and listen to last month's episodes about the new moon in Virgo, because we talked about it a few times, and that preconceived foreshadowing, forecasting might feel super fascinating right now on top of the energy, or what should I say, when we get to September 21st. You can make a note, hey, maybe go back and listen to last month's Moonday Musings episode about the eclipse in Virgo. I'm going to be honest. This is going to be an intense month. Virgo season's going to be just like so active and running. There's a lot of energy around this particular new moon that looks like getting rid of, purging, purifying, cleansing, throw it out, get it out forever, send it into the eclipse portal, dust your hands off, goodbye. And I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of potential to feel about 20,000 pounds lighter on the other side. And when I was writing out this transit, instantly, that silly idiom that we have in Western culture, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, did come into my mind. Now, I know this phrase very well, but I remember a time not knowing what this phrase meant. And it was sometime in my adulthood. So I certainly, I didn't always know what this meant. I was old enough that I had to ask, I remember, what does throw the baby out with the bathwater mean? If you're one of those people, what it just means is don't throw out something good and of value by getting carried away with throwing out the bad and undesirable things, okay? That is a really helpful phrase, the idiom, dare I say borderline affirmation, to take into that, to the new moon in Virgo solar eclipse. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can see a lot of us having such a ramp up in energy and so much throughout this month, and a lot of intensity, especially mentally. Especially mentally. Our nervous systems are taking on a lot, my friends. I'm going to keep reminding us of this several times a month, because the planetary movements and interactions we're having are just indicating a lot of activation and goings-ons in the air realms, in our brains, our minds, our thinking, our intellectuality, our communication, our learning, what we're importing and what we're exporting. And it's a lot. And Virgo energy is also very associated with the earth element. And this can be a time that overstimulation is on fucking high, which is why I'm telling you, with about every single transit I went through this month, if you didn't already do it, go back through your calendar, your planner, whatever you took notes with, your little journal guide that I gave you, and draw a little green leaf or a tree or the alchemical symbol for earth or whatever you want to write that symbolizes ground, bitch. Because seriously, you need to. This just counteracting all this. Just picture this crazy Charlie Brown Peanuts comic sketch of like scribbles in the cloud and a rainstorm above your head. We need to like really bring a lot of that down. We can give so much of the excess to Earth. Do you see why we're going into elemental magic this month? It's so helpful. Oh, I can't wait. We could go into so much and I need to not. So seriously, especially by the time of this eclipse, ground, then ground some more. Maybe do a little cleansing and then ground some more. Okay, then the very next day, on Monday, on September 22nd, the day after our eclipse and end of this eclipse season, keep that in mind, that will be the last eclipse. We have Mars moving into Scorpio and we have the sun moving into Libra, both on the same day. Two very big shifts. One very dramatic, especially in a gorgeous, breathtaking way. We are at an equinox. Equinoxes are stunning, breathtaking aesthetically, both in the southern and northern hemisphere. This will be a happy, happy spring equinox to our southern hemisphere neighbors, as we will be entering into our fall equinox. Both are just as breathtaking. The southern hemisphere will get to see the first budding and fresh breath and life of spring, and we are going to be into that beautiful turning point of autumn and fall here in the northern hemisphere. So you've got this gorgeous shift into Libra season. Fall is here, witches, and Mars moves into Scorpio. The heat gets turned up. The spice gets turned up. This is fiery. This is intense. This is pretty sexy, but honestly, it's really emphasis on intense. I'll be honest. Sexiness in Scorpio can really manifest itself and does so uniquely in everybody. This can be a time that, like, honestly, just like kink culture just really, really heightens and raises and expands a lot. But this can also be a time of great creative inspiration and expression and outlet. So keep that in mind as well. This can also be a time of emotional intensity. So there's also this just very intense, especially in a super reactive way. And this can also be a very brooding time. But some of our most beautiful creations can come out of Mars in Scorpio time. This is that like shocking, breathtaking art that is so raw and vulnerable and intimate and intense, whether it is a song that makes you feel that way or a piece of art that you're looking at that makes you feel that way. This is a time that can be great, deep intimacy can be accessed through extreme sexual acts. Like, that's just the straight up truth. But also, our desire can be really, really, really turned up right now. And I think actually that is the really most helpful part about Mars in Scorpio transit. This is going to be until November 4th. And especially for those of us that struggle with what do I want? What do I desire? That can be turned up a little more intense, a little more obvious right now. And it can be a little bit easier to see that and recognize that and access that information in ourselves. And I advise you in that realm, go for it, my friend. Whether that is in the bedroom or totally has nothing to do with that at all and is completely outside of the bedroom. Go for what you want and what you desire and what brings you joy and pleasure. And again, your most vulnerable self is also your most authentic self. And this is how we achieve some of the deepest, greatest, most transforming intimacy in our lives as well. All right, my friends. So it was a lot. Do you see? I mean, it's a big September. It's a big September. Big things. Again, we are going through the fundamentals of elemental magic throughout this month here on the podcast. We are going to go in even more depth in that witch school. So if you are really, really excited about that, that witch school is the place to be. This is going to be something that is accessible to my students to get more out of each of the episodes that we go through here, and actually put them into practice through some exercises, some prompts, some real hands-on type suggestions and work that helps you feel side by side or in tandem with the elements, which we always are at all times, honestly. I cannot wait to go into this. This whole series of fundamentals of elemental magic is honestly this ramp into so much that I want to do throughout the rest of 2025 with everybody, both on the podcast and even deeper in that witch school. I am beside myself with excitement. I want to get to all the fun things that we're going to be doing by October and November. But seriously, elementals are going to set us up for such great success in everything that we're going to explore together in October and November. I cannot wait at all. Now, also want to mention that my books are officially open. Fall is here. Back to school season is now officially upon us. And my books are open. I close my books every summer. And I would love to take you through a journey through your personal astrology, much like we do here on Moonday Musings. But I can do that just for you personally in your unique birth chart. I find that my clients that book sessions with me come back to and refer back to everything that we come up with and work through in sessions, especially transit readings like this, over and over again. I really like to set you up for success so that after session, the meaning and the clarity only continues blossoming more and more and more as time goes on for you, my friend. So if you are looking for some cosmic guidance, and if you love how I move through the astrology, teach the cosmos, how to work this practically into your life, I would love to do a one-on-one session with you. You can book a personal birth chart reading with me, and you can just make a note in your booking form whatever type of reading you'd like to focus on, whether it's a general birth chart reading, we could go through transits, we could do a seasonal reading. The options are endless, my friend. But you can book with me at thatwitchnextdoor.com. The links are in the show notes below, of course. And thank you for spending your time with me today, neighbor. I am so grateful for your time and your energy today. and every day. If this was your first time here at That Witch Podcast and That Witch Next Door, make sure that you hit the follow and subscribe button. We release videos and episodes every week. And until I see you next time to dive into the magic of elementals, make sure that you are out there staying safe, still having fun, of course, and stay magical, my friend. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you learned something, or you just love That Witch Podcast, one of the best things that you can do is share the show with a friend. Just by reaching out and sharing a link or recommending us to somebody is hands down the best way to help us grow our podcast here. So you can head right now into the podcast app that you're listening to, and you can directly share this episode by using your little share link button, or you can just take a screenshot or just mention That Witch Podcast to whoever you're recommending us to, because you can find That Witch Podcast on all major podcast listening platforms. Thanks for being such a great neighbor.